Good evening. I'm Dr. Greenbrier Almond, and thank you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Each week over the past 35 years, we've been talking about this interface between Christianity and medicine. And I think of medicine not just sickness, but also how to live healthy and how to prosper and to grow up strong. And so it's particularly with great pleasure that I have invited a new worker here with Young Life. This is Thomas Nickel to our program and then to the Buckhannon community. So Thomas,
Thank you, Dr. Almond.
Thank you for coming on, and welcome to Buckhannon.
Thank you. I've been loving being here so far. Couldn't get here fast enough. Everyone has given me such a warm welcome, and I couldn't be thankful enough and express enough gratitude for the welcome that I've had here.
Well, great.
So
we love to be hospitable. It's a trait of mountain folks. And Scotch-Irish background that most of us have.
Absolutely.
We just look forward to welcoming you, and you are here as an adventure and as a mission.
Absolutely.
And what happened that you ended up Thomas Nickel, not of West Virginia? You told me before, and growing up in a city of 1 million people, and we're a state with about 2 million people.
Right. Before I came here to West Virginia, I was a banker at a very large mortgage company in Cleveland, Ohio, based, originally based out of Detroit, and I had, a very comfortable life. For a guy out of college, I made very decent money.
You found a job in a hard market, right?
Exactly.
So that's a good sign. Yeah.
It was a good job. But I was working, very long hours, very long days, 70, sometimes more hours a week.
Wow.
And it was just hard for me to feel like I was contributing to what God was doing. I spent most of my time on the phone with clients all across the country, and Heath Sizik, who is the area director of the Eastern Mountain area, which includes Upshur County.
Okay, Eastern Mountains of like the Appalachian Mountain Range. Is that how Young Life thinks of that?
Well, the Eastern Mountain area specifically is Barber, Tucker, Randolph, and Upshur County.
Oh, okay, right here in the West Virginia.
Yeah. But so that area is the Eastern Mountain area, and they're trying to have an initiative to get Young Life in every county of West Virginia.
Okay, wonderful.
And some counties, their actual goal is to make sure that the gospel is heard by kids in every county. So in some areas, if the church is, doing an awesome job reaching out to some of those really far away from Christ kids, there's no need for Young Life in some areas like that. But some areas, there's areas where kids' hearts are hard.
Right. Kids, I'll give you an example,
Yeah.
and I've used this as an example of on this program before, but after finishing a career with the VA, taking care of soldiers and their families, I realized one day, attending a seminar at Wesleyan, this is probably about 10 years ago, that there were 1,200 kids a year who required protection of Child Protective Services. Something had happened in their home, and something was going wrong, and they needed some type of investigation. And 1,200 kids a year in Lewis and Upshur County, and there's probably only 8,000 kids in those two counties, so 1 in 8 or so of the kids needing that type of investigation. And I thought, well, who's taking care of them? And so I went up, left the VA and went up to Rock Cave, and became part of their clinic. And lo and behold, in a short time, we had about 500 kids that were coming for help. It was pretty amazing, and more than I wanted to do. But I mean, it was a blessing in one way. But the need was there. And but one of the things that happened was I realized that very few of these children were in church. If they lived with their grandparents or they visited their grandparents on the weekend or something like that, they might be in church. But I could not even tell the story of the rainbow and count on them knowing about the promise of God as per Noah and as per the rainbow. I mean, they were not understanding what I would call simple Bible stories.
Right.
It surprised me. It surprised me because I had my eyes were closed. I was focusing on the veteran for a career, and while I was doing that, something was happening with our children.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally understand that, and you know that's part of what we're doing is, you know, as Young Life, we go to the kids who are kids that might not set foot in a church, kids that might be really far from who Christ is and having Him in their lives, and so obviously Young Life is a parachurch organization, so we're not trying to replace the church, but we're trying to work side by side with the church to get kids back involved in what the church is doing.
Yeah,
and so that's a big part of our
we're
mission.
blessed. We're blessed with active churches here in many ways. And
Yes.
one time, these are illustrations I've used before, but it seems apropos, Thomas, to what we're talking about. That someone had said, "Well, there's plenty of churches in Upshur County," but this conversation was going back and forth, and someone else said, "Well, if everyone in the county needed to sit down in church, like 23,000 people." Would there be enough places for all of them to sit down in a church? and the answer is no, probably not.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how many seats there are in church, but anyway, it would not be probably 23,000. But one time I went to Williamsburg. Perhaps you've been there. It's a historic the city, the early capital of America, really. And they one of the points they say is there was a seat for everyone in the Williamsburg community in church, and they took roll. If you weren't in church, so someone would realize you're not in church and come see why not.
Yeah.
But we don't do that anymore. But there are a lot of kids outside the church, and those are the ones you want to reach.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what our goal is. You know, we want to reach kids that you know, we want to reach kids that aren't being reached and that are hard to reach at times.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the it's our bread and butter is we just go and spend time with them. You know, it's not, you know, we have a lot of great programs in Young Life. We have a lot of great you know, Bible studies, and we have a lot of great discipleship groups. But the bread and butter of Young Life is just going and spending time with kids where they're at and developing those relationships.
Over the years, I mean, I've heard of Young Life and was aware that it was in our community. And meeting you was, I think, not just a happenstance, but you were walking down Florida Street the other week with Jay, and he's a local pastor and Filipino, and we were. My wife's Filipino, so I was happy to see him and see you. And but Young Life had been meeting downtown in an older business that went out of business, a cleaning business, and that was the last thing I knew about it. But that's been several years ago.
Yeah. You know, just because of, you know, some organizational things, Young Life has not had the same, I guess, the same momentum that it once did. And so part of the reason I'm here is obviously to help with a lot of the kid work, to help with some of the organizational stuff. But it had a huge volunteer base for a long time. And I think part of it is that, you know, a lot of people were growing, you know, weary just doing this on top of their regular jobs and on top of managing their families. And so I'm just really excited to be here as a young single guy, to be able to give my time, my heart to this, and to be able to see that it has the momentum that it once did.
Yeah. One of the things I when I was thinking about becoming a psychiatrist and medical doctor and psychiatrist, I was thinking, well, anyone can do what I do. I mean, listen to people who need a listening ear, and maybe offer some hope and wisdom and encouragement. And but what happens? This was an actual study on a college campus. If kids are paired when school begins, and the idea is that they will talk to each other if anyone needs to talk, and one will listen, and they'll do that very well for a month or two. But if they have homework or a dance or sports or this or that, they cancel that meeting and they go off and do their thing. And the professors were paired. So every student, maybe 5 or 10 students to one professor, they were to connect and meet and talk and work out issues. And lo and behold, professors would do that a little bit longer, but they also would have national meetings and this and that. And so that a person in crisis might not be able to get to their professor. It would be only a professional staff who said, I'm here pretty much 24/7 and committed, and that was there when there was a need. And I gather you would hope to fill that bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you, no, being young and enthusiastic and growing up with the music of this age and you know sports better than I do, and
I don't know about that, but all right.
yeah, and other
I try.
genres
Right.
that kids are into. You're savvy to the internet and so forth.
Okay.
But that's an in for you, isn't it? I mean, as
Yeah.
opposed to say someone who's almost 65 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it does make it easier at times. You know, having come out of that, you know, of the same generation.
Right.
Being able to relate to kids. You know, being at the football game, I saw a kid wearing a T-shirt that I recognized as a skateboarding T-shirt. And it just gave me an opportunity to talk to a kid about, you know, just something he enjoyed doing. And, you know, it was great because it was a very great conversation starter with a kid that maybe a lot of other people wouldn't have had an in to talk to. Being from that
Right.
generation and understanding that a little bit.
Right. And the old term scapegoat and skateboard, they fit almost in our community because you don't know this whole story, but there used to be a little skate park downtown, and it was taken down by the city. It was getting decrepit and so forth. It needs to be rebuilt, but you know these are a group of kids without a home,
Right.
for their sport and their interest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if they would bring something like that back. You know, because that
Right.
was something that this young man shared with me is that, you know, he feels like he doesn't have anywhere to take his hobby now.
Right. Your background again, banking. That's sounds like a business degree, maybe management degree, organizational skills. I mean, have you thought about that and focused on that some before you even got to this position?
You know, I studied communications and
Okay.
public relations.
Okay.
And one of the things they told me when I had applied for that job is, you know, the financial stuff we can teach you, but you can't teach people communicating.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, that's a tough thing a tough thing to teach people, especially in, you know, a 2-month training course. You know, how to be relational. And so that was, you know, I think one thing that transferred well to this, and then, you know, as far as what I pursued in that, you know, I guess I bring a lot of skills with that to this, from the organizational side of thing, understanding the finances, you know, so I think a lot of those are going to serve me well here. But as far as a career in those things,
it was empty. Yeah.
yeah, I just felt, at least for me personally, there are people that can make that their ministry. There are people that can make being in the corporate world and being their ministry to their peers and coworkers in the corporate world their ministry. And you know, I wanted my ministry to be high school kids again. I had done it through college and volunteered under the local area director back when he was on staff in Canton, Ohio. And I just missed being able to be an effective part of that ministry like I had been. And
Well, that's good. Now, here another thing about you, and I guess you're single, right? I mean,
I am dating someone.
dating, but
yeah,
not
I'm not
permanently
married
attached.
right
but
now.
I mean, as a father, I
Right.
had talked to my kids, and I said, you know, don't be quick to give up your childhood
Right.
for all the adult roles. I mean, because once you marry, then you have to be prepared to have children and,
Right.
and welcome them, and then of course you start to buy stuff. And
Right.
anyway, the kids, to their credit, listened to me on this one, and they were able to have great big adventures in life and marry sort of almost at 30 or so, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm glad for them because their childhood was extended in a sense. And so you're free to roam now. You can come to the West Virginia.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
you don't have to stay in one place and
Yeah.
take care of a family.
Right, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's something my dad always taught me too, having grown up in a ministry household, that, when you look for someone to spend the rest of your life with, you want to look for someone that is going to go to the ends of the earth with you.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's something I've always looked for, and that, whatever my ministry is, whatever nice young woman that I am contemplating taking out to a
Right.
nice dinner, would she, and that's part of the learning process of, just knowing people and just spending time getting to know people, and that, someday would this person go to the ends of the earth with me?
Yeah.
If that's where
Wow.
Christ calls me.
Wow, that's
So-
amazing. Well, you don't have to disclose all this tonight, but
Right.
I'm going to I tell you a little bit story about
Yeah.
meeting my wife, and we've been blessed with we're 38 years now. We're working on 38 years of marriage, and but I had a list like maybe young men do, and I wanted someone who would go to the ends of the earth. I wanted them to be musical.
Okay.
I'm too white and get too badly sunburned. I wanted them to tan easily. I mean,
Okay.
I thought I wanted my kids to have that. I didn't want them to be sunburned all the time. It was a crazy list of things.
All right.
I had to laugh a lot, and but I was amazed that God provided the right person,
Right.
and even details that I had not emphasized but I knew would be important to me. He provided in my wife, Araceli, and it's pretty amazing when it works out that way.
Yeah.
You have to trust God, though, don't you? It's a
Absolutely.
matter of stepping out in faith and taking one step, but say, okay, now lead me to the next step. And
Absolutely. Yes. Amen.
well, here you're going to learn a lot about yourself in West Virginia, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
What do you say to yourself when you are taking these faith steps that you're taking and establishing hopefully life-changing events for kids here in Upshur County? And
Yeah. One thing that I always just carry with me, in college, I took a class on the Old Testament, and I had to do a 6 to 8 page paper on the book of Habakkuk.
okay,
If you've ever-
not a very common book in the
Right.
Old Testament. Yeah.
But if you've ever read Habakkuk too, it's only 3 chapters long.
Oh, okay.
So I had to write a 6 to 8 page paper on a 3-chapter book. But one theme that kept coming up through the book, it was the verse that the righteous will live by faith.
Uh-huh.
And, that's just one thing I've kind of carried with me dearly in that, to live a righteous life, I have to live by faith in where God's taking me.
Wow.
And
yeah.
so I had to live by faith when I left my job. I had to live by faith when, I made the decision to come down here and trust that God was going to provide the financial support and the prayer support and a place to live. And, it's just every day, it's just living by faith and, being righteous only in the fact that I'm living by faith and just trusting God for every need.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, it was a poster. It's still with me in my mind, but it was from my youth group at church, and it was a simple poster. I don't know why we were making posters that day, but someone else made this, but I loved it as soon as I saw it. It was a partly yellow, partly black poster, and then it had footsteps, like you can cut out and make little baby footsteps. Anyway, into the darkness, and there were black footsteps in the light. But anyway, it said, faith is taking steps into all the darkness you can see, but I guess holding God's hand and taking one more step. I mean, you have to. It's not what you can see. It's stepping beyond what you can see
Absolutely.
in faith, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it would just be a good deal if you could be sure that it would work out.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean,
Amen.
I think we're all local here. I mean, this is local TV, and you'll meet some really great people, and we love our community, and we would say anyone else who wants to come here, they will have a great life if they come. And here you are, but you're beyond that. You're on a faith adventure right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell me. You mentioned your father being in the pastor or the ministry, but you mentioned Kenya and Scotland. So you have actually crossed the oceans at different times here already in your young life?
I have. Yeah, my father has been involved with Young Life since he graduated college back in the early 80s.
Wow.
And so, he helped start Young Life in Bowling Green, Ohio, Worcester, Ohio, was on staff in Cleveland for several years. And, with my father's ministry, I've been able to take 2 or 3 trips to Kenya, I think 2 or 3 trips to Scotland, and then 1 trip to Italy as well. And
Wow.
so I've just had the opportunity to see a great deal of the world
Yeah.
and see God moving in all of those places, in places that a lot of people believe to be very pagan and very spiritually dead. And so it's been unbelievable to be able to experience that and see that happening and to see God moving in those places.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
And so you are. Every time we step out in faith, and I would say this to anyone who's trying to change their life for the better. You have to trust that God is with you wherever you go. I mean, it could be moving to Charleston, West Virginia from Buchanan, or it could be crossing the ocean someplace. God is with you wherever it is. you
Yeah,
go.
absolutely.
Well, what Young Life? What makes it a unique ministry? A parent ministry on beside the church, helping the church. People are not in church. I mean, I guess that's part of the problem, right? So we have to go out and find them where they are.
Absolutely.
What's Unite? What's Young Life? What's their approach?
The Young Life's approach is spending time with kids where they're at.
Okay.
To reach kids who aren't in church, you don't always want to invite them to church.
They don't know how to dress up to go to church, or they
Right.
don't know if they'll be accepted, or people don't want to be rejected, do they?
No, not at all.
And I don't think churches are rejecting, but it's the inside the person. They don't
Right.
they feel that.
The self-consciousness. And
Yeah.
so part of it is meeting kids with where they're at, with, whatever problems or whatever strengths that they have. Meeting kids where they're at and spending time with them on their turf. A lot of times churches have the best intentions. And they have great programs, they have great relational ministries. But there are kids who will not go to a ministry at a church because it's at a church. And they're not comfortable in the setting of a church yet. They haven't experienced Christ enough to be comfortable in that setting. And so part of what Young Life is good at is meeting kids where they're at and introducing them to the character of Christ and experiencing him in a real way and getting kids back involved in the church.
Yeah. One of the amazing things as I studied Christ's life and tried to follow his footsteps as best I could, was that he never seemed to be in a hurry when he was doing his ministry. He had 3 years of earthly ministry, and he would be walking down the street, and someone would have a need, and he would stop and meet that need.
Yeah.
Maybe there would be a lesson that he could be teaching about the fields are white for harvest. He'd look out and see white fields ready to be harvested this time of year. You can look out and see the fields. The corn has to be in, the potatoes have to be dug. He could take that and make it a story moment, a lesson moment. It's quite remarkable the way he lived his life. And,
Absolutely.
And I don't see very many stories about where the teaching he did inside a church was necessarily the most important teaching that he did.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, modeling. I think that's one term that they'll use a lot in Young Life. That I should say we'll use a lot in Young Life. Is that it's incarnational. We model what Jesus did, and we try to model how Jesus did ministry.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And even the people that he invited to join him were the ordinary people, if you want to say that, the fishermen. Maybe a tax collector, someone like that, some banker.
Right. I guess I'm the tax collector in this story, huh?
Yeah, you are. You fit the bill.
Right, I guess.
The shoe fits, wear it, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, well, my grandfather was a banker in a bank that no longer exists in Clarksburg called Lowndes Bank, but he was called into ministry as an adult.
Yeah.
And we had the Great Depression, and and he was able to build a church. He knew something about finance, and he knew, of course, he was following God's lead, and he had a quite remarkable ministry, combining some of those things he knew before he went into the ministry that some people don't know. I mean, guess how to do things and organizationally. Well, what you're going to have some big events coming up. You have a date, a start date or a main date. Here, we may want to announce that we have about 4 minutes to get people connected with Young Life.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're aiming to do is we're aiming to have our start date on October 15th.
Okay.
We're still looking for a definite location, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to allow some high school guys to wrestle a pig.
Oh boy,
we're gonna have
greased pig.
Right, a greased pig in a barn.
Okay.
And so we're gonna, that'll be our event. It'll obviously be hilarious.
Yeah.
We're gonna get a bunch of kids out for it, and then we're gonna have them wrestle a pig, and then we're gonna do Young Life Club. We're gonna sing some songs, do some funny skits, play some other games, and then we're gonna, do a short presentation of, a piece of the gospel. And then through the rest of the school year, we're going to continue to do that, just without the barn and the pig.
Right.
But we're going to continue to present the gospel to kids piece by piece in, revealing who the character of Christ is. And maybe bringing down some of those negative or inaccurate first impressions that kids have of Young Life, the church, and Christ.
There really are... spirituality or connecting with Christ is really different from religion, isn't it? And maybe the old-fashioned religion that maybe kids find too narrow for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's, obviously to show kids that, following Christ, a lot of kids will say, think about what they have to give up to follow Christ. And the thing that we challenge them on is that it's not about what you have to give up, but it's about what you're giving up if you don't. And, part of that is the adventure of a life with Christ, and that you'll never know where it takes you from Cleveland, Ohio to Buchanan, West Virginia, or, to Kenya, Italy, or Scotland.
Right.
And that following Christ is a wild adventure, and, the things that you might miss out on without following Christ, and the things you'll get to experience.
I think my life would have been boring without Christ, and then I met my wife, and we go back and forth to the Philippines and help with the Bible school there and things like that I would have never imagined, how beautiful the Philippine Islands are. People know about Hawaii and so forth, but when you start to travel the world, you see that God has created something so marvelous that it's unless you go and see, you don't know.
Right, absolutely.
Well, Thomas, I'm very glad you're here. I sense and feel that you are going to have a great work in our community. Some folks may want to reach you. Are you going to have an email address or a way?
Yeah.
Or, how can they connect with you? Just
my address is just Tommy, Tommy, Nickel, Nickel, @me.com. TOMMY.NICKEL @me.com.
okay.
And if you have anything that you'd be willing to, any way you can help or any way we can help, just reach out and let me know, and I'd love to connect with you. And if you have any questions about what Young Life is, you can even visit the Young Life website at younglife.org.
Okay, very good. Until the next time, then, this is Dr. Greenbrier Allman thanking you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Special thanks to Channel 3 for the opportunity to come your way each week, now for over 35 years, and always fresh and always bold, now with Young Life in our community and Tommy Nickel among us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.